HeartGold is gigantic. Who was gonna tell me? Y'all been so excited for this one in the comments, but nobody told me I'm gonna spend twice as long filming this thing as any other game so far. Welcome, it's me, Mothio, Jimothy for long, and I've been doing deep retrospective videos on all the main Pokemon titles in release order. This time, it's HeartGold and SoulSilver's turn. Really just HeartGold though, cause your boy wants a ho-oh. I do my retrospectives through the lens of a full playthrough of the game where I try to hit every single relevant piece of content. That's every dungeon and quest, every NPC Pokemon trade, and especially any gameplay systems new to that version of Pokemon so we can track how the series has evolved over time. It has just been stapling on new mechanics every time like some stitched monstrosity. They can't all be winners. I zoom in extra close during remake videos, cause everything that has been changed in a remake has been changed for a reason. Something as minute as a grass patch being scooted up 5 tiles on Route 32 can make a big difference in how the game plays, and, well, I'm here to nitpick all of those. HeartGold and SoulSilver are triple remakes, kind of, because they not only remake the Generation 2 games, Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal, they also iterate on Gen 4 systems from Platinum version, which is the game that came out most previously, and they also kind of iterate on FireRed and LeafGreen, which is the only previous time that Gamefreak has put out a remake. The differences HeartGold and SoulSilver have over the Generation 2 games are mostly about content and game design choices, whereas the differences between HeartGold, SoulSilver, and Platinum are more mechanical and technical. Nature is now showing us the stat they increase and the stat they decrease in-game, so we don't have to reference a table in our notes. That's a great change since Platinum. But Nature's existing at all, now that's a sweeping game system that was not present in Generation 2. Regarding FireRed and LeafGreen, those games bent over backwards not to change any content from the originals, relegating all non-Kanto Pokemon and gameplay systems like breeding that weren't present in the Generation 1 games to the post-game Sevi Islands. HeartGold and SoulSilver definitely take more liberties with the content than FireRed and LeafGreen did, so we're gonna see how we feel about the many changes as they come up. Now, this intro is already getting long, and this video is aiming to be massive, so I fear I'm gonna have to make this a part 1 and only cover Johto through the Elite Four. There's just so much content in the game overall, on top of having so many version and remake differences to cover, it would be Christmas by the time the full video came out. It also means I'm going to speak a little more broadly when covering my team's journey through the game for expedience. My previous videos detail how I take out each Pokemon in a gym leader fight, and every time a Pokemon learns a sick level up move. In this video, you might just hear me say, yep, Thundershot carried against Falkner, moving on, with only large important changes to the team getting called out. And final points of order on team composition. I'm usually real careful to pick a team that showcases as much new content as possible. For example, raising an Ambipom to demonstrate move-based evolutions in the game that introduced those. And I also confine myself to using only new Pokemon the first time that I play each generation. Well, this is my 3rd game now filmed in Johto, and also my 3rd Gen 4 game, so most of those restrictions are out the window. This team is Mothy's best, picked for power, with just a couple chosen to highlight HeartGold SoulSilver specific content. Holy long intro, Batman, let's play the game. I'm playing as a boy, and I'm pleased to see the boy character looks cooler than the girl for once. In Diamond and Platinum, and I'd also argue Gen 3, the male character looked really dweeby with a strange old man hat and clothes. Here we have cool black pants, white shoes, black hat, Cadillac, while the girl has a ridiculous Mario hat and iToy anti-grav ponytails. Since we're not playing her, that girl becomes our friend and neighbor Lyra, whose Meryl greets us as we begin the game in New Barktown. Professor Elm wastes no time granting us a starter Pokemon. The quick start to these games does feel nice. I chose Chikorita for this journey through lengthy process of elimination. Basically, I have my fire and water types chosen already. Plus, Chikorita has a reputation for being weaker than the others, so it's worth checking if she got better in the remakes. She did. This is Midwest Emo with a timid nature. What's a timid nature? Well, for the first time, we can see our nature defined in-engine if we squint. The text shadow is faintly pale red on the increased stat and faintly pale blue on the decreased stat. Let me state on record as a software designer that they chose the colors terribly. Red is pretty universally the color for negatives. Yes, that was even true in 2010. These colors should have meant the opposite of what they do in this game. However, it's still very welcome to have this information finally shown in the game. There never should have been a time when the mechanic existed but wasn't explained. Companies were really out here just driving web traffic to GameFAQs. I wonder if they got kickbacks. Kickbacks. Mother gives us the Poke Gear, essentially just a selection of menu features that got grouped into their own separate submenu, and just like in Gen 2, she fully explains how the phone works, even if we say we already know. Same as Gen 2, the start of the game/tutorial is us fetching a Pokemon egg from Mr. Pokemon north of the second town. I fought a couple of wild Pokemon as I walked there because I like when the first arrival battle isn't a nail-biter, and Midwest Emo learned Razor Leaf after gaining a single level. This kicks off your early game a lot sooner than with Cyndaquil, who has to wait till level 10 to get Ember. There is definitely some upside to Chikorita. That old man in Cherry Grove still gives us a small tour of the city, and this time he's the source of our running shoes. We did not have these in the original games, and they're especially nice for all the walking that we need to do at the start of the game. They're also nice in Johto in general, who has a lot of twisty routes, less good for a bicycle. It was Generation 2 that introduced berries. Your starter comes holding one, and you immediately find a bunch of berry trees to begin picking. Berries also got you excited about the real-time clock, seeing how they regrow every day. Generations 3 and 4 continued to rely heavily on berries, adding dozens of new types and a whole system for planting our own. A system that took a very long time to use. It was just physically slow in the game to tend berries, and didn't end up mattering too much. It's something you notice when making back-to-back videos on these games. I've probably deleted 8 gigabytes of footage by now just of me touching berries. So, for HeartGold and SoulSilver to be the first game since Yellow version that doesn't push berries is actually a welcome relief for me. Instead, berry bushes are now apricorn trees, which is great. Apricorns are still good for crafting balls with Kurt, but the fact they don't have any battle uses relieves any pressure to collect them. If you do want to collect them, it's much less time consuming. Just click the tree once a day, no watering, or mulching, or picking ones from your inventory to replant. On our way back to Elm's lab after retrieving the egg, we run into our criminal rival, who every NPC just forgets is a criminal and drops the investigation immediately. His name, in Generation 2, is explicitly given to us as ? Here, it's revealed when he challenges us, Passerby Boy. Passerby being his class, like Swimmer or Super Nerd, and Boy being his name. So I report Boy to the police and deliver the mystery egg to Elm, who then suggests we go take on the gym challenge throughout Johto. Before we head out though, visit Mom to have her siphon prize money from our battles into a savings account. We cannot decorate our room like we could in Gen 2. That's one old feature I'm actually sad they didn't bring forward because I liked secret bases in the villa. But Mom does buy some properly helpful items using our money, so it's worth sending her a tithe. The silk scarf after she siphons 10k and the choice scarf at 30k are her most interesting prizes to me. Lyra gives us our catching tutorial, then we're free to start building the team. I have a first catch in mind, but we've got to advance a little ways first, Midwest Emo taking solo care of an armful of early trainers. There's no early Pokemon with the pickup ability this time, so I'm free from the obligation to stack my party with Zigzagoons, but I do need to grab a Bellsprout for a trade. The NPC trades in HeartGold and SoulSilver both are and aren't the same as Gen 2's. The trades within Johto are the same as Crystal version's trades, but then the post-game only keeps a semblance of the Gen 2 trades and adds a lot of new content. Our first trade, once we reach Violet City, is sending that Bellsprout to Ruby for his Onix Rocky. These trades didn't have natures last time we performed them, so each of them may end up better or worse than they were in Gen 2 just from a battle perspective. Rocky's nature offers increased speed for less defense, which is fine, but the more important change specific to this trade is that Rocky doesn't not make sense now. Used to be he would bust through the obedience cap for traded Pokemon and you couldn't really use him. Onix now learns a rock attack at level 9, making him actually usable against Falkner without disobeying orders. And then, beating Falkner now does an intermittent increase to the obedience cap to level 20. Previously, we had to wait until Bugsy to boost the cap all the way to level 30, which meant Rocky wasn't practically usable until then. More granular obedience caps is something I did ask for in the past, so I'm thrilled to see someone at Gamefreak is supporting the NPC trade ecosystem again after watching it steadily get more neglected each game since Yellow. Really, HeartGold and SoulSilver don't seem afraid to fix things that never made sense, like obedience, berries, and showing natures in-game. That's probably my overall thesis for these games. They're not just remakes, but retunings. There is a man in the Violet City Poke Center named Primo who will give away 3 Pokemon eggs if we tell him the right passwords based on our trainer ID. Now, I'm not going to raise any of these egg Pokemon on my team because the passwords were only ever given out as promotions and in Japan, so they're clearly not intended in the spirit of the game. He offers Slugma, Mareep, and Wooper eggs. But Mareep and Wooper are easy catches right now anyway, so only Slugma would be a cool rare one to acquire so early. I claimed a Slugma and a Mareep egg just for demonstration purposes. HeartGold and SoulSilver took away the little patch of grass on Route 36 that was accessible before the first gen. That was a neat source of early Growlithes in Crystal. But we got a more interesting grass patch added in exchange. Down on Route 32, there did not used to be any grass accessible before beating Falkner because an NPC would block our way. Now, the grass extends north prior to that NPC gate, allowing me to catch a Mareep in time for the flying gym that it's super effective for. This cutie pie is Cigarette with a good timid nature and the great static ability. I actually haven't ever run a Mareep before, but I'm aware many people consider Ampharos pretty strong, so let's see if that holds up. Neither of my Pokemon is great against the Bellsprouts of Sprout Tower, but it takes Cigarette a few levels to learn Thundershock anyway, so I just tackle my way to the top. My team is level 12 by the time we beat Elder Lee, with Midwest Emo learning Synthesis. That's really strong so early, while opponents don't all have coverage moves to damage more than half of your health in one attack. Sprout Tower does provide an escape rope once you're done, but I chose to walk out because I can't buy escape ropes yet and I want one for a puzzle in the ruins of Alf. It turns out the Mart inventory adds escape ropes after you beat Falkner though, so there's no need to ration escape rope like this if you just visit Alf after the gym. Speaking of, it's not like Violet City's flying gym was tough in Generation 2, but the player had no way of achieving super effective coverage if they tried. Except by catching an overpowered ice-type unknown, but I don't generally recommend that. This time, you don't need to drive all night looking for the answer. Cigarette is a daydream, thundershocking her way easily through every opponent in here. Gym 1 in Johto has never been so easy. After defeating Falkner, we're given the Togepi egg as an actual egg rather than a key item, and asked to hatch it. Now, I just played through Platinum version with a Togepi, suffering badly from its lack of attack moves for a long stretch of the game. HeartGold addressed that with this specific Togepi by giving it extra sensory as an egg move from level 1. An 80 power special psychic attack. It's a good move. And this introduces the single biggest change HeartGold and SoulSilver made from the prior Generation 4 games, Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. Mid-generation, HeartGold decided to add new egg moves to dozens of species across the national decks. For most of these species, it's one new move, but a couple got 2 or 3, like Seal got the whole 3-piece stockpile moveset. The thing is, a lot of these egg moves are bad. Like, a combination of convoluted breeding lineage needed to actually achieve the egg move, and or the move is super niche on that species anyway. Like, did Pichu need Flail? Tail Whip on Meowth? And who's raising an Espeon to level 71 just so they can put Morning Sun on a Ponyta? The new egg moves fall into a category of change that I like to obsess over in these videos, because Gamefreak chose to add these new egg moves. They didn't happen by accident, this took intent and effort. So I made it my mission to scan the whole list and check if any of the new moves here have a big effect on single-player gameplay. Well, the Venn diagram of egg moves that were added in HeartGold SoulSilver are feasible to actually breed and provide benefits to your team is extremely slim. I found 3 options, each with major drawbacks. Option 1, Cyndaquil can get extra sensory too. It's an interesting coverage option to have on a fire type. But to get this, you'd have to be playing SoulSilver, catch a Vulpix as early as possible, rush the XP share, then have Vulpix leech your party's XP, pushing it through to level 44, at which point you're probably pretty late in the game anyway and don't want to begin raising Cyndaquil from an egg. Option 2, requiring less wasted XP, but it's also less helpful of a move. You can catch a Corsola with Rock Blast, then Goodrod fish a 3% Shelder encounter in New Barktown to breed a Rock Blasting Shelder. Shelder has good attack stat for Rock Blast, but Rock type doesn't add much on offense that Cloyster's Ice and Water types don't cover already, and you do already have Surf by the time you can pull off this breed. Well, down Route 32 in the Union Cave Poke Center, a fisherman gives us the Old Rod that unlocks the egg move that I settled on for this run. There's not much wasted XP, and the resulting move is pretty good, but we pay for this one by needing to make some highly specific and low odds catches. By detouring back to Route 31, 5% of the time we can fish up a Poliwag. 2.5% for us because we need a male Poliwag, and I strongly prefer an attack up nature also, which further reduces our odds. It took a while to hook a male Poliwag period, but I miraculously caught an attack plus nature on my first try. This is Pancakes, and he's joining the team. Seriously, it's a miracle that he ended up with a good nature. Just hooking one of these took ages. You can walk with a Pokemon now, like the Pikachu from Yellow version, except for any Pokemon in the game. Whichever Pokemon is first in your party will follow you around on the overworld, doing almost nothing except look cute. It's hard to state why this is such an excellent feature. It doesn't do anything, and I think that's why I like it. Walking with Pokemon was done for the love of the franchise, for the fans, and for the pure artistry. The effort it took the art team to animate overworld sprites for all 493 Pokemon, plus work from design and development to make sure that they work right in all the maps, feels like something that wouldn't get greenlit from any large game studio these days. It's what you'd call a, quote, nice to have feature. Definitely not a priority when deadlines need to be met. Putting in a ton of work just so the software feels better is a rare luxury, and it absolutely made this game 5% more enjoyable overall. In Union Cave, I spent a little time catching a sandshrew for content. We need one much later on. And our new catch, Pancakes, demolished all the trainers in here. Water type goes hard. There's an extremely small patch of permanent rain on the Azalea side of Union Cave. We've seen several permanent weather areas before, like rainy Route 119 in Hoenn or the hail on Route 216 in Sinnoh. But this one is ridiculously small. I don't know why they bothered. Screw Hiker Anthony in particular, I guess. So, we're in Azalea Town, which has some charming new details. The charcoal cutter's house has a thatch roof and a woodpile outside, and inside, somewhat grimly, they've got enslaved Farfetch'ds working the kiln. I want to point out, inclusive of the Pokemon walking with us, the art direction of this game is very strong. They put more work than ever into different versions of the same buildings feeling different. They created a bunch of new textures and sprites, even for small one-off areas, and filled the world with irregularities and objects that make it feel realistic and warm. It's the Pokemon game with the best vibe, comfortably so. In the Slowpoke well, Midwest Emo evolved. Sigret had also turned into Floppy back on Route 32. I noticed something about the Team Rocket enemies down here that stays true for the whole game. Team Rocket's Pokemon levels are distinctly below the random route trainers surrounding them. It feels like Gamefreak intentionally designed Team Rocket to be weak in battle as a gameplay choice that matches the narrative of Team Rocket's weakened state. That is interesting, but I don't love how it makes them all, not fun to battle. But I do like that they gave a name and identity to the final boss of the dungeon. That makes our actions feel more important, getting to stop a high-ranking bad guy. This is Executive Proton, and his level 8 Zubat drives my points about the difficulty thing. Once the Slowpokes are saved, Kurt will very slowly make special balls out of apricorns for us like he did in Gen 2. But whereas in Gen 2 he could only craft one ball a day, now he can craft multiples of the same ball if you drop him a whole stack of the same colored apricorn. This is a big improvement because if you're going out of your way to catch some Pokemon using a special ball type that's good against it, you will want a stack of them, not just one. HeartGold SoulSilver also fixed the glitched balls so they actually serve their intended purposes, but that note isn't worthy of praise. Something yes praiseworthy is how they changed up Bugsy's gym to have puzzles. Most of the gyms, especially the Kanto ones, many of which were just walk in and challenge the leader, got redesigned with fresh puzzles and textures in this remake. Puzzles like this break up the normal battling loop of gameplay and inject a little excitement into the game, and for me, who grew up playing Gen 2, they're one of the biggest reasons to play these remakes. It's fun new content. Of course, the real puzzle is often figuring out how to intentionally fail the puzzles in a way that lets me get all of the trainer experience. And then Bugsy? They're tough. Way tough for a second gym. They now lead with a Scyther who likes to use U-turn, dodging your attempts to hypnotize or thunder wave it, and their Kakuna knowing Poison Sting is a real opponent too, not just a hardened bot. This fight took me a couple attempts to win. I had to chance into a run where Scyther spent turn 1 setting up rather than U-turning to land Thunder Wave, then take out the Cocoons with Midwest Emo abusing Synthesis to stay alive so that Sigret and Pancakes had more health remaining to close against a paralyzed Scyther. We're given our own copy of the powerful U-turn TM for winning, but its user list is not very large and I sadly won't get to use it on this run. But it stands out as quite a powerful move to get so early in a run, and I was this close to running B-Drill just to take advantage. It's a nice change from the usual trash TMs most early gyms give out. I don't know how many more times I could tolerate receiving Rock Tomb. Boy fights us on the way out of town, and that goes much easier. Starting with Chikorita, then raising a Poliwag was basically a bait and switch against his Quilava. Togepi finally hatched a few steps into Ilex Forest, so I called Professor Elm about it, and he said to swing by. First, though, I still have to retrieve Farfetch'd, who tries to run off in the forest, but this time there are 2 instead of 1. Quite thrilling. Now, a fella could chill until Sudowoodo is cleared to get an easy path home to show Togepi to Elm, but I decided to head back east right now so that I could cover a bit of content. For one, Rock Smash now gives you an item sometimes. I broke the rocks in the ruins of Alph for some good stuff. Rare candy, max revive. I also got a blue shard, and there's conveniently a juggler NPC right here in Violet City who exchanges shards for packages of berries. Okay, they're not completely gone. My Mareep egg from Primo hatched while I was on this errand, an illustration of how much extra walking you'd have to farm if you wanted to use this egg Mareep against Falkner. Many worse grinds have been done for content in this series, but still not great. Once we show Togepi to Professor Elm, he gives us an Everstone in thanks. An item this series loves giving the player early and often, but this will be the first time that I actually want one. Pancakes can hold this. It'll give him 50% odds of passing down his nature to the egg when we breed him. Then my Slugma egg hatched, and my heart broke because it's actually perfect in ability and nature, but I just can't do 2 Slugma runs back to back. Returning to the Ilex Forest to make progress, Headbutt now comes from a move tutor rather than a TM, but still in the same location. Seems arbitrary that they changed that. I stick Headbutt on Togepi to avoid clogging anyone else's moves, then got started hunting for my 4th team member. I like that any given tree either spawns Pokemon 100% of the time or 0. It's not like fishing where a cast can whiff. Once you find a tree that spawns Pokemon, you can just headbutt it until the one you want pops out. Heracross is my goal, and it took a few catches to find one with a good nature. This is Sports, and he has boosted speed, which is really important because he's a bit of a glass cannon. We specifically want him to outspeed Morty's ghosts, and the right nature makes all the difference. Heracross has been fixed significantly since Generation 2. It used to be he wouldn't learn any usable on-type moves ever. Now he gets Brick Break at a mere 19 and lots of good coverage moves besides through TMs. We meet a kimono girl a bit farther on. This is actually our 2nd one so far. These are the dancers from Ecruteak's dance theater, but they've been spangled throughout the world as awkward little cutscenes that leave me more confused than entertained. This is a long-running issue I have with the Pokemon games. The character writing has always been pretty bad. Since the earliest games, plot develops by some NPC popping onto your screen out of nowhere, speaking their lines at you, then running back off with no interaction from the player. It feels like I'm watching an audition, and I also don't like how the player gets no agency in these scenes. It's why I don't like calling these games RPGs, really. They never let us P the R. This phenomenon is hardly new in HeartGold and SoulSilver. I just picked now to notice it. It goes all the way back to Gen 1. It turns out Lyra is the granddaughter of the daycare couple, and we get another character cutscene as she introduces us, and I get her phone number. Her grandma teases her about having a crush on us because of this. It's definitely the most heavily that a Pokemon game has implied a romance between the boy and girl characters so far. I'm here for it. Then, as in Gen 2, I've got 2 catches to make here on Route 34 for the content. One is fishing for a Krabby, any old catch will do, and the other is for a Drowsy, which may get used pretty soon if you want to power game Whitney. Goldenrod City has an explosion of content for this run. I was so overwhelmed just looking at my own guide here, I had to psych myself up to film all of this. Let's get into it. Grabbing the bike feels like a safe place to start. We only really need this for cycling road in Kanto and to make hatching eggs a little bit faster. Gen 2 Goldenrod had a weird smattering of extremely small buildings over here, but they coalesced into larger, more reasonable buildings in Gen 4. Like in SimCity, when 2 adjacent crappy one-tile residential trailers combine into a 4-bedroom house. I stopped by the radio tower for my radio card next. It's actually required to get that in this game before Whitney will return to her gym. I'm okay with that acting as a gate here because in a recent run of Crystal, I actually got all the way to Kanto and tried to claim the radio expansion card before realizing I had never claimed the actual radio back here, and I had to sail back on the SS Aqua. It's impossible to make that same mistake now. Department Store came next for our 2nd NPC trade of the game. That Drowsy we recently caught trades to Jose for his Machop Muscle. She arrives with a Macho Brace, a real item, so it may be worth making this trade just for the item alone. Muscle comes with increased attack and decreased defense, acceptable, and is designed to be the perfect weapon against Whitney if you're struggling there. On the 6th floor of the department store is an interesting new feature. There's a gacha game we can pull for $300 as many times as we want per day, but there's only one grand prize available each day, a rotating TM. Some of these are strong, but most of them are also given out during the game, some of them quite soon. I'd say Dragonclaw on Sundays if you're running a Feraligatr on the team might be the most exciting outcome here. The prize today was Charge Beam, which I'm happy to give to Cigarette as a minor power boost over Thunder Shock since she's been having trouble closing fights. Of course, I spent a few thousand on fresh waters on the rooftop and then put my remaining cash into max repels, but I could not afford too many. Actually, I felt quite poor overall throughout this run. HeartGold and SoulSilver balanced the money rewards pretty low, not helped by sending money to Mom, and the amulet coin coming pretty late once the team has better held items already. The Underground has a few trainers, as before, and a new photo studio. You can take a photograph with your whole team at many points throughout the game. This spot is special because your character puts on a Team Rocket uniform as a prop for the photo. It's really weird at the moment, but this is actually so that we can learn where to find a rocket disguise when we need one later. There's also a fun little feature where you can dress up a Pokemon with accessories and take a portrait. Fluffy looks really weird with a white mustache added. I only had a few accessories for this, and I didn't find any more as I played. I think you need to regularly speak with the Pokemon who's walking with you because they can pick some up. Except I totally did speak with the Pokemon throughout the run, and they never had a prize. I'm not sure what I did wrong. Random note, but Super Nerds are very cool now. Mecha Pikachu is very cute. And then we're left with the Game Corner. Before ever playing it myself, I had heard a lot of vitriol concerning the Voltorb Flip minigame. I personally find it kind of fun. It's a little minesweepery, though it often comes down to a guess, and I can see that being frustrating. It's okay in moderation, but the problem is you have to play Voltorb Flip, a lot of it, to get any of the casino prizes. Our ability to just plonk down 80k on coins and buy a TM outright is gone. I didn't have the patience to gamble for hours for the expensive prize TMs. I'm not sure they intend for anyone to do that, but I did collect 2,000 to earn a silk scarf. That was dumb because Mom does buy us one soon, and a wide lens to boost accuracy. The lens overperformed in Platinum for me, letting me mostly ignore the imperfect accuracies of Hyper Beam and Fire Blast. Here, it's going to go on Cigarette to make sure that Charge Beam connects, and it ends up being one of my better held items all game. Okay, with that, we've handled all of Goldenrod proper. We can still head up Route 35 early for a lot of good trainer XP before Whitney, and the National Park has a little bit more. The bug-catching contest in the park has been reprised on 3 days of the week, but the contest did not change much since Gen 2, so that's one bit of content I'm allowing myself to miss. It also happens to not be running today. The big development there is that after getting the National Pokédex, first prize becomes one of any random evolution stone, and you can catch some non-native bug species. In the park, we find the Dig TM right where it was in Generation 2, and newly, a Soothe Bell, which is a much bigger deal than you might realize. Natural Umbreon or Espeon evolution comes very late, like Victory Road late, but a Soothe Bell to boost friendship puts those Pokemon on the table much sooner. Well, let's do Whitney's gym. There's no added puzzle in this one, but the smaller footprint of the gym and the raised walls help you see the Clefairy design in the walls that was impossible to notice without a printed map in Gen 2. Whitney herself, infamously difficult, goes down in just 3 brick breaks from Sports. She didn't even bother healing after my middle usage brought Miltank down to low health. Sports' speed plus nature likely helped me here too, going first so that he dodged stomp flinches and preempted any mitigation nonsense from Clefairy. Defeating Whitney has opened up a huge new subgame, the Pokeathlon Dome, located west of National Park. Pokeathlon is basically HeartGold SoulSilver's version of contests, a non-battle mode of competing with hours and hours of gameplay for those who desire to master it. Now, HeartGold itself and most descriptions you'll find online make this place much more complicated than it needs to be. It's minigames. There are 10 minigames in total. You can compete in little triathlons of 3 games at a time, adding up scores from each round and aiming for the best overall performance at the end. Then you spend the points you earn doing that on items for the campaign or reinvest to help yourself win future competitions here. And like contests, these minigames are not fully walled off though. Not intrinsic. Like, you can do preparation outside of the Pokeathlon to help you win the minigames inside it. Because each Pokemon now has a page for Pokeathlon stats separate from combat stats, and these govern how good a Pokemon is in the minigames here. Power might help you destroy objects faster, or stamina might help you resist getting pushed around. And you can boost these stats with beverages. Re-enter apricorns. So, besides ball crafting, apricorns can be blended into juice using a new key item that we get in the dome. Adding the right colors of apricorn and walking around for a long time to blend it can yield large stat changes when a Pokemon drinks the resulting juice. I made one sample juice myself without Googling optimal strategy, and it was so nasty, all it did was make Kenya's power decrease. Yeah, Kenya's still in the game, don't worry about it, it's the same quest as before. The prizes for competing in the Pokeathlon Dome rotate each weekday, the most exciting being evolution stones for 2,500 points. That's actually not too pricey. For reference, you can achieve that in about 5 contests and 30 minutes time. Gold and Silver did not hand out evolution stones until Kanto, where you could only get one of each stone by doing catch quests for Bill's grandpa. Crystal made the stones available sooner as rematch prizes from certain trainers, but it could be finicky and random getting them to call you to fight again. So, giving us a new, definite way of picking up evolution stones in HeartGold and SoulSilver is a welcome change, and it's a compelling reason to interact with the whole Pokeathlon ecosystem. Of course, I had to play at least one contest. I entered Sports, Pancakes, and Cigarette into the Power Circuit, no one besides Sports having particularly good stats. The first minigame here was Block Smash. I just had to tap the stack of blocks rapidly to break them, my stats affecting how quickly I can break a block as well as how quickly I get tired. Be careful and switch your active Pokemon out when it shows fatigue, or it'll collapse and take a rest that wastes a couple of seconds. I thought I did great here, but I only came in 3rd place. Blue and yellow teams were on fire here, so aside from doing well myself, I'll be looking for ways to hurt their scores in the next few rounds. My round 2 game is Circle Push, which feels very Fall Guys. Every team is controlling all 3 of their Pokemon at once. You want to be standing inside the circles whenever time is called to earn points. Stats affect how good you are at pushing others and resisting their pushes. After getting ripped off from my positions a few times, I quickly learned the strategy is to secure 2 of your Pokemon near the middle of the less contested larger circles, just to guarantee a few points there, then use your 3rd Pokemon to wait until just before time is called, then shove an opponent out of the smallest circle to claim the biggest prize alone. A strong performance here barely made up the ground that I lost in round 1, but I'll still need to win round 3 to guarantee that I take the contest. The final round also felt Fall Guys-y, just 4-team free-for-all soccer. Scoring is weird here though. Making a goal gives you a point, but also takes 1 point away from the scoree, with your stats affecting move speed and how good you can kick the ball. This was a very good round for defensive play since I could specifically persecute Blue with my goals, and I took a wide lead here. Pancakes the Bullywag was an absolute menace at soccer. Strong 2nd and 3rd rounds won me the contest with 486 points total. And those are just the points you keep for buying prizes with. I kinda like that. They don't translate 1st place into X preset amount of points or anything. You keep what you've earned. With a bonus for 1st place. There's a somewhat deep metagame for the Pokeathlon. There are records to set, additional rooms and trophies to unlock, plus the whole apricorn blending system to master, and it's all so much content it would easily fill its own video, so I'm happy to just take my 1 win and continue on with the rest of the run. As with contests and super contests of Generations 3 and 4, I gave an honest effort at a single Pokeathlon competition, did have a great time with it, and have no need to do more. Sudowoodo can be activated in battle now, and I actually have to be careful to catch it for content. We need him in like 20 to 30 game hours. I accidentally killed mine and had to reload later and fix the timeline. Don't be like me. The girl from the flower shop gifts us berry pots once we reopen the walkway. These 4 pots are how we can cultivate berries in this game. Since all the contest stat poffin stuff has been removed in favor of apricorns, berry growing is mostly just for if you want to use berries in battle, which I am so happy not to. But the sick Miltank still exists in the remakes, and she's gonna need 7 Oran berries, so I do plant 1 crop of Oran berries in service of content. Please, please, hold your applause. HeartGold has double battles now. What's wild is they had these twin girls in the original Gen 2, but double battles weren't a thing back then. It's a really neat attention to detail that the few double battles HeartGold and SoulSilver added are ones that felt like they would have been double battles in the original if the tech existed. FireRed and LeafGreen had just a few double battles, and HeartGold and SoulSilver allowed a few more. I'm glad that it's not a mechanic that they disavowed in favor of Faith 2 of the originals. Ecruteak City is still laid out in an ugly, flat grid of pavement, contrasting the pretty traditional design of the buildings here. this is one town where I personally might have arranged the buildings different for the remake. Bill is in the Poke Center here, as before, unlocking the Gift Eevee if we return to Goldenrod City. And like I said, that early Soothe Bell makes Umbreon and Espeon more viable than ever. The Dance Theater got an overhaul. Instead of a tough gauntlet fighting all the kimono girls, those girls, as we've seen, are scattered through the world as little cutscenes now. In HeartGold, we just have to beat one severely underleveled Rocket Grunt for the Surf HM. Now, Gen 2 played it much more carefully with the power curve after Gen 1 had given us some busted TMs early on, which made it stick out when they suddenly gave us Surf in Ecruteak. Aside from being an HM, Surf is very powerful in battle. Surf is still a pretty nice power spike, but it stands out less in Gen 4 because they've been giving us access to some better techniques before now. Speaking of, TM65 Shadowclaw is conveniently placed for taking just east of the city on Route 42. This move is very obviously dropped here to help us defeat Morty, and Sports' main destiny has always been to employ Shadowclaw as our resident ghost hunter. One of those classic NPC flybys happens here too, as a hiker foists the Strength HM on us and dips. We could always get Strength in Gen 2 now by walking over to Olivine at this point and getting it from a Sailor, so I guess by putting this hiker here in Gen 4, what they're actually doing is blessing us to, in fact, have Strength early and admitting that it was a bit of a mistake to make us have to walk so far to get it. Okay, Shadowclaw and Strength are nice, but we actually came this way because it's time to finally realize that egg move that I've been scheming up. Hop inside Mount Mortar and settling for a long Pokemon hunt. Marill could be a swarm Pokemon, but swarms don't happen until the post-game, so I'm stuck hunting for a 1% non-swarm Marill. Actually, 0.5% because I need a female. And after hunting for ages, I finally ran into a male, and a male, and a male. I've done some tough grinds for content on this channel, but this female Marill hunt might be my worst one so far, at least in a Pokemon game. Lois souls were kinda tough. We don't care about her nature or her ability, thank God. We just need a broodmare. Once I finally find one, Pancakes' hypnosis is a big help in delicately making the catch. Then we can finally pull off a breeding stunt for what I consider the most usable of all of the egg moves added in HeartGold and SoulSilver versions. Pancakes was level 20 by now. A single spare candy puts him on level 21 to learn Body Slam. Then he goes into daycare holding the Everstone, along with Mama, the Marill, and I got to bicycling around Goldenrod until an egg occurred. It is kind of nice, the daycare man will just call you in this game when an egg happens. I didn't need to be patrolling right nearby like I was. You gotta save the game before claiming the egg, cause there are still 2 abilities the egg could hatch with. We specifically want one of them. And even with the Everstone, it's only 50% for the father's nature to actually get passed down. So it's slightly more than 25% odds that one egg has a baby that we want when you factor in that there are still some other natures besides the father's that are still acceptable even if his doesn't get passed down. We can call in some help hatching eggs though, because that promo code Slugma has the Flame Body ability which halves hatching time just for being in the party. Cheat code. But Arceus smiled on me this day. I did not have to re-roll the egg a single time. Pancakes and Mama made me proud. Their very first egg gave me a perfect baby. Baby Marill with egg move Body Slam, and the huge power ability doubling her listed attack stat to make Body Slams extra lethal. This darling is wee wee wee. She actually didn't inherit her father's nature though, but chanced into a different one that still increases attack. That's all I was asking for. Turns out she egg moved Surf and Rain Dance too, I guess, but that's just icing on the cake. Okay, game progress. HeartGold and SoulSilver kept the Yucine storyline and the expanded Suicune content from Crystal version. We meet Yucine in the Burnt Tower and get another fight against Boy, where I began the journey of swap training Wee Wee Wee. My one takeaway from this fight is how weak Fluffy feels. Cigarette learned Thundershock at level 10, and that's really her main move until Discharge at 34. Patching with Charge Beam didn't help much because she still can't one-shot a Zubat. She hasn't felt strong in a while, and I fear she's going to drop off even more because we're still not close to either evolving or learning a better move. Set the dogs free in the basement. Raikou and Entei will now roam while Suicune moves to its next quest stage in Cyanwood. Sadly, HeartGold and SoulSilver removed the 1% level 16 Wheezing encounter that Crystal version randomly had in the Burnt Tower basement. That did feel like a mistake, but it was one of the few ways to get an illegally leveled evolved Pokemon like so many of the gym leaders use. Wee got strong quickly, and she's able to win her own fights very soon. But to help her reach party level, I completed Route 42 and entered Mahogany Town a little bit early. As before, a suspicious man blocked us from exiting town to the east until we've covered much more plot, but this time we want one of his rage candy bars. They're no longer just a reskinned potion, but a key item we want for a super minor quest in the far distant future. I actually like how Pokemon games include these quests or trades where the needed item or Pokemon for it can be gotten much earlier than the person who asks for it. It's a nice contrast to games where you can only perform the task once the quest is given. Design like this rewards foreknowledge and repeat plays. It is fun. Morty is one of the tougher gyms in the original games, and it might be difficult again here, but I wouldn't know. That Shadowclaw TM is heaven sent, and it makes this whole place a breeze. As far as the physical gymnasium, it's a nice upgrade. They kept the spirit of the hidden paths mechanic, but made it more interesting with a winding path using darkness instead of invisible teleporters. It's not only more fun, but more thematic. Against Morty himself, yeah, Shadowclaw on sports is extremely good at sweeping. Whitney and Morty were the tough gyms in Generation 2, but Bugsy has been the hardest gym in HeartGold SoulSilver by a wide margin. As a returning player from Gen 2, I appreciate that the gym difficulties got shaken up. We still get a Shadow Ball TM for winning. Like Surf, this was a pretty big power bump in Gen 2, but here in Gen 4, it's just another arrow in our quiver. We're heading west on Route 38 now toward Olivine City. I guess we can talk about this now. Way too many trainers in this game want to trade phone numbers after battle. It's like 60% of them. My contacts list grew to astronomical size by the end of this game. The good news is phone calls still come in at about the same rate whether you have 50 of them or 10. Third and fourth generation Pokemon games, the ones before this, had a much better rematch system with the VS Seeker. Because the VS Seeker is on the player's schedule, whereas taking phone calls for rematches is random and often super inconvenient because you'll be nowhere near the challenger. The cell phone system was core to Generation 2, so I can understand why they brought it into the remakes, but it is just a worse system than VS Seeker, and this is one place I feel the remakes didn't do a good job. Switching topics, one of the biggest changes that HeartGold SoulSilver made is reopening the Safari Zone, and it's not even in the post-game. To get us excited for it ahead of time, I guess, we meet Bayoba outside Moo Moo Farms, and he hypes up the Safari Zone, which is not even open yet. We'll get access to the Safari Zone after just one more gym. I guess building hype is nice. Then, that sick Miltank in the barn still needs her berries, but my planted ones aren't quite fruiting yet. We'll have to come back. Body slams from Wee are proving very powerful, by the way, even one-shotting some weaker foes without being a same type move. I just want to highlight that it's definitely a good egg move. Worth doing? Probably not, but good? Yes. Once in Olivine, I collect the good rod, then pull Fodder Krabby out of the PC. It's time for another trade, this time to Richard for his Voltorb Billy, which I find super endearing. Billy has a neutral nature and the good static ability. As a species, its only natural electric special move is Charge Beam, but that's actually an improvement from learning nothing in Gen 2. The cafe is much more lively than it was in Generation 2, though there is no content here this time. It used to be where we get the strength HM, so I do like that one Sailor Hair still hints at where to find strength in this game if we had missed it. HeartGold did a better job making most areas in the game better, but the Olivine Lighthouse is one that, for me, is not even neutral, but a little worse in HeartGold SoulSilver than it was in the originals. It's the tone. The floors are smaller, and it feels more like an office building, especially with the colorful lobby. The old one felt more dungeony and had those holes to drop through. And then the room on top used to be a cozy living space for Amphi. This time it's a confined glass prison. No wonder Amphi got sick. Surfing to Cyanwood comes next. I know I'm beating a dead horse, but I really felt Cigarette being underpowered here, since in most of my runs I would be one-shotting the entire sea route with my chosen electric type. I expressed my dismay over this to my Discord, and they helpfully suggested I delay her evolution by a single level to learn Discharge 3 levels earlier, and that does help me out down the line. Thank you, chat. We still get custody of Shucky the Shuckle from the Scared Boy in Cyanwood. This time it's holding a berry juice, though. And our one and only Yucine fight still takes place on the beach after witnessing Suicune for a second time. It's not very tough. I would have liked the difficulty of this fight increased to at least match rival fights, since we only fight Yucine once all game, but his Electrode with Thunder can still be slightly scary if you get unlucky. And then I wasted a lot of time doing something very convoluted just to see if it works. I kept missing steps and I had to reattempt this like 3 times. So it turns out if I walk all the way back to Route 34 from Cyanwood without entering another Poké Center, catch an Abra, stick my 2 Pokemon who know Surf into Daycare because the game won't let me release Pokemon who know Surf, use the Abra to teleport back to Cyanwood's Poké Center, then release all the rest of my Pokemon through the PC, I should be soft-locked in Cyanwood since I now have no way to get back to the mainland. But HeartGold and SoulSilver have this NPC in the Poké Center gift the player a free Tentacool in this situation to avoid the softlock. I wasn't technically in a full softlock yet because I still had my fishing rods and money for Pokeballs, but the game does not force you to throw away all of your balls and lose all your money before rescuing you. So yeah, HeartGold added a secret softlock prevention Tentacool. It's level 15. Loading our game now because continuing on from here would suck. Chuck's gym got a fair bit more interesting. There's a small spatial puzzle and a little more decoration in the gym, but Chuck himself still has just the 2 Pokemon. It's important to dodge focus punches from Poliwrath, but I didn't mind Surf making me a wet cigarette. She's always second best. Amphi's cured, blah blah blah. More importantly, the Safari Zone is open. Well, after we return to Olivine and get a phone call from Bayoba that it's open if we return to Cyanwood, an annoying round trip they force. There's a short cliff edge route west of Cyanwood into the mountains that we can now traverse, and it leads to Bayoba's new Johto Safari Zone. There's some cool catches to make on the way first on the new Route 47. At nighttime, 5% is Miss Drevis, no longer confined to the postgame. I would have liked to see Morty have one of these instead of just the Ghastly line now that Miss Drevis is sanctioned for Johto play. There's also Steelix at 2%. It's actually not the first time we've had catchable Steelix in a Pokemon game even without a friend to trade with. I just wish they'd spread the love to Golem or Huntail or, any of the other 10 trade Pokemon. Then we're finally here, the single best improvement HeartGold and SoulSilver made over the original games. Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal kept so many of the, at the time, new Generation 2 Pokemon locked from the player until reaching Kanto, and with only one other generation of Pokemon in existence so far, the Pokemon selection in those games felt disappointingly weighted toward that one pre-existing generation, the original 151. But it doesn't take a lot of Pokemon to tip that scale. Offering just a small handful more of Generation 2 Pokemon during the Johto campaign changes the balance from being majority Gen 1 to majority Gen 2, and I'm delighted these remakes chose to address that. They didn't do it by shaking up the encounter tables in the rest of the game much, but especially with the Fuchsia City Safari Zone being closed, writing a new one into Cyanwood fits the world pretty well and makes a great receptacle for the new Pokemon they wish to offer the player. One second though, before beginning that fun, I do have to headbutt trees for a moment on Route 47, because we do need a Forretress way later, and to that end, 16 is the best level of Pineco we can catch if we grab one right here. Okay, Safari Zone. It has the same 30-ball catching system as always, and Bayoba quests us to catch a Geodude for him. That's easy to do. The park itself works on a cool new system. There are 6 regions arranged in 2 rows of 3, but each of these is modular. We can rearrange those tiles to place different biomes, which of course contain different Pokemon in them. Some of the more interesting Pokemon we can make available early on include Cubone, Houndour, Murkrow, Larvitar, Kangaskhan, and Diglett. I know Diglett isn't that special, but in Johto, sure. We can't do that biome rearranging until Bayoba offers his second quest though, and we get a phone call for that in 3 real gameplay hours after turning in the first quest, that Geodude. So we'll have to show that a little bit later. But before we move on with the game, in order to pass time for that phone call, I've got a little more business inside the Safari Zone as is. I'm lucky that one of my biomes randomly began as the Badlands, because therein lies a Pokemon that I'd like to add to the team, Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan has suffered from being quite tough to catch in the past, as well as becoming available rather late in the game. It's still not too easy to catch, but it's much easier to encounter than in previous Safari Zones, so it actually wasn't too long before I caught one. And as a bonus, Safari Pokemon have a propensity to be strong because their IVs get re-rolled up to 4 times if no stat has a value of 31. I'm sorry to report Midwest Emo's time on the team is done here, but I'm honoring her name by naming her replacement after one of my favorite songs in the genre. Aside from being very strong, she even has an attack plus nature. Using the Kangaskhan solves a hyper-specific gripe I had with Generation 2 a little bit later on. Stay tuned for that. It's time to head back east to Mahogany Town again. I'm getting whiplash. But on the way, my Oran berries were finally ready, so I picked 8 and replanted some other berries that I don't really care about before stopping in to heal Miltank. The prize for this quest in Gen 2 was a crappy TM, but this time we actually get a seal case for decorating Pokeballs. While I love that system in theory, it needs a little more time in the oven. They don't let you put any Pokemon in the PC whose ball you've decorated, and I do enough swapping around for trades and quests that can be a real issue on my runs. Then I started using again some trash wild Pokemon on Route 38 to get her just a level or 2 before putting her in real fights. Fake Out plus another attack is a strong combo, and it finishes most fights before she takes a hit. I also tossed her the Drain Punch TM that I had picked up at Moo Moo Farms, or that a person could win in the Goldenrod Gacha drawing, and that gives her nice coverage. Then, with a new Kangaskhan who wants levels, and a Pineco who needs levels, the XP share is the most important thing that I can be doing. Let's get to the Lake of Rage. Of course, there's a Suicune cutscene on Route 42 now that we spotted it in Cyanwood. The Lake of Rage got a slight redesign, and now it feels cozier? The area is stuck in heavy rain, so the hedge maze has turned into a surfing maze among flooded trees. I want to point out, we got the red flute as loot here. What it does isn't important, I just noticed HeartGold and SoulSilver give out all the flutes as rare loot throughout the game. It's sort of an unofficial side quest to collect them all. Much more exciting are the choice specs just chilling on the ground up here. These boost your special attacks significantly, but essentially perma-encore you into using whichever move you select first in battle. I didn't find a great use for these in Platinum, which also gives them to the player pretty early, but they are perfect here on Cigarette. She's really just been using the one attack anyway, so their downside isn't a downside, and this should bring her back into one-shot territory, at least when a foe is type weak. Speaking of... okay, but that wouldn't have even been close without them. Red Scale gets us the XP share for Pineco after walking back to Mr. Pokemon, and I actually ran into Raikou twice in a row while clearing up some route trainers. Used Fake Out to put a little dent in its health bar, but I'm not planning to catch this thing, just slapping the tiger for fun. While I'm in errand mode, I also cleaned up a handful of surf errands around the world and grabbed the optional trainer XP. Using at level 26, got to face down a mirror match 26 Kangaskhan in Union Cave. Drain Punch was a huge advantage here. Here's a weird mothy nitpick. You don't win Soft Sand for defeating the trio of sisters off Route 34 anymore, just a power herb. That's weird because HeartGold and SoulSilver otherwise did keep most of the type damage boosting held items in their same locations. Both the weekday siblings and stuff like Charcoal and Miracle Seed are where they were. Soft Sand was removed. Ah well, around now Bayoba called and had my next Safari Zone quest ready, so I detoured back there too. This time he wants a Sandshrew, which he tells me to catch in the Safari Zone, but I actually have that one we caught a while ago in Union Cave. I can just... yeah, he knows where you caught it. This one's a bust. We actually do have to catch one in the Safari Zone. For doing that and turning in our fresh-caught Sandshrew, Bayoba gives us the entire Safari Zone. We own the place now. Except that comes with exactly 0 benefits. We still have to pay admission to enter the park. This is such a weird choice. I feel like it's just a writing decision so that it makes sense why we now have the power to rearrange the biomes in the park. It's quite a step up from owning a villa in the post-game of Platinum. Pokemon is ramping up our real estate exposure quickly. We have to pass 3 more in-game hours before anything cool happens with the Safari Zone, so it's time to move on and just face Jasmine's gym. Unfortunately, one of the gyms most in need of improvement didn't get much. It's visually more interesting, but there's still no puzzle nor any trainers to fight. I used to believe that's because the game only had a couple of steel types and they didn't want to wear them out, except we've always had Morty's gym spamming haunters at us, and there are even more steel types than ghosts, so that doesn't hold up. They just did a lazy job with Jasmine's gym. Again. Sports continues to be overpowered here, and I score a flawless victory. They might have overcompensated and made Heracross too strong, y'all. From here, it's back to Mahogany again for the small Team Rocket dungeon. Opponents are tragically underleveled here. Like, if we had rushed here first thing after beating Whitney, the levels would be okay, except you'd still have to defeat a level 30 Gyarados as a prerequisite, so that's unrealistic. It does feel again like the game is keeping Team Rocket levels low on purpose to help convey the lore of the organization being weakened, but at the cost of making this whole place be boring to fight through, I wish they hadn't. They do continue to give names and personalities to the Rocket executives though. Petrol with his level 22 Zubat and coughing really puts up a good fight. Instead of just learning the password from this Murkrow after the fight, it actually runs down to the door and recites the password for us, which is cute. And the female exec Ariana still tries to beat us in a 2-on-1 fight that Lance evens out into a 2-on-2 fight, but it's an actual double battle this time. We've gotten like one of these partnered double battles each game since Emerald, and I enjoy them very much. I'd enjoy this one a little more if Lance didn't bring a level 40 Dragonite to crush them. Frankly, if they were going to have Lance be overpowered here, they may as well have just used his full strength level 49 Dragonite for the wow factor. Ousting Team Rocket from Mahogany Town opened up Pryce's gym, which I actually really enjoyed in Generation 2. Gen 4 brought back the ice gimmick, so I'm still a fan. The leader, Pryce, is no challenge. Sports again would dominate. I only used him for Piloswine, but Cigarette is quite strong against his water types, and the fight is no problem. Pryce's TM prize in Gen 2 was Icy Wind, which felt quite weak to acquire so late in the game at only 40 power. This time we get TM07 Hail, which I point out because starting this generation, Hail gives Blizzard 100% accuracy, so it is more compelling than ever. Slightly. Of course, beating our 7th gym means returning to Goldenrod City to kick Team Rocket out of the occupied radio tower. They added a new step of needing to disguise ourselves as a rocket to be allowed to go up the radio tower, something we know how to do thanks to that photo that we took in the underground with a borrowed uniform earlier. Cigarette did finally learn Discharge at level 31 fighting a grunt, so I allowed her to evolve into Ampharos. And that Pineco also hit 31 to evolve into Forretress, so I got to take back the XP share and stop siphoning my party's XP away. At the top of the tower, Petrol, whom we fought quite recently, turns out to be the fake director. Man wasted no time getting here. He's a lot tougher in this fight with level 30 plus coughings and wheezing. Good on him for locking in. Then, as we head down to the underground portion of the dungeon, one of those kimono girls shows up again and drops the first hint that our meetings are not coincidence. Something about a legendary Pokemon and us handling ourselves well. It seems as though we're being monitored, and those kimono girls may have had a hand in our fate. There is a rival fight down here, as before. The great news is, Cigarette with Discharge is finally one-shotting flying opponents. Wee and Sports continue to be monsters, and they carry the rest. The Shutter Maze got a slight redesign, but I love that the solution sequence is the same one from the originals if you remembered it, just left, middle, right. Save the real director, then we're back up the radio tower to beat the executives for good. Proton from the Slowpoke Well makes an appearance, we've got Ariana again from the Lance double battle, and then I recall that the final exec battle is quite tough with a high-level Houndoom to fight. That is indeed the case. This executive is a new one named Archer, and he's properly tough, harder than any rival fight and some gyms. I lose a few Pokemon crashing them into Houndoom before Using takes it out with a Drain Punch, but the rest of the fight is rote. With Archer defeated, Team Rocket has been handled for the rest of the game, minus that one guy in Cerulean City later. The real director gives us the Rainbow Wing for helping, but unlike Generation 2, we cannot go catch Ho-Oh now. They're gonna force us to beat all 8 gyms first. That one woman still gives the Sunny Day TM, but new in the remakes, Mary will also give us a Bright Powder on the way out. The quality of held items is so strong in this game, I would have loved to get this one a little sooner. A normal gamer would proceed toward Blackthorn City now, but I have to check up on the worst quest from Gen 2 to see if it got any better. The Lake of Rage has by now returned to Sunshine and Tourism, which means the fisherman in the house now wants to see a high IV Magikarp. Gold and Silver versions were the origin of this catch a bunch of copies of some Pokemon until you get a high IV one quest from the very same fisherman. It's a quest format that has existed in every game since then, and it's never been worth the time. At least having Quick Balls now make this edition less painful, and in 6 or 7 catches I'm able to bring in a massive Magikarp for my prize, 1 Ether. Most things that HeartGold and SoulSilver did are modeled after Crystal version rather than Gold and Silver, but the prize for this derpy Magikarp quest is an Ether like it was in Gold Silver rather than an Elixir like it was in Crystal. Is this tongue-in-cheek? Yes, but it's true. Someone in the design room chose to remake this quest and then chose to make its prize be the less whelming of 2 underwhelming options. With that thrilling side quest complete, we're free to proceed on Route 44 toward Blackthorn City and catch a 5th Pokemon for the team. Things have felt a little thin with only 4 party members, but as you can see, I'm still only just above Root Trainer levels as one generally should be. It's not like the smaller party size has let me get ahead in levels much. So the Ice Cave has 2 major power-ups for the party. One, the Waterfall HM is much better than Surf for Wee, considering her attack stat dwarfs her special attack, and Waterfall being a physical move. Now that she has this, there's sadly very little use for Body Slam, and the usefulness of my hard-earned egg move is now concluded. 2. I'm looking for a new Pokemon. Without Fairy type yet to balance Dragon, these games necessitate a strong, fast Ice type for the Dragon user in the Elite Four, and I'm aiming for the OG Ice Carry, Jinx. I tried to catch this big girl in a Heavy Ball, but only ended up succeeding with a Heal Ball. She's a tough catch. This is Pasadena, so named because there was a Goosebumps book about an abominable snowman from there. I'll say this up front, Jinx stinks in HeartGold and SoulSilver. I didn't vet her first for Gen 4, assuming she would be as strong as she was in Blue version. Well, she learns no psychic moves and is stuck with Ice Punch on Ice, which does not take advantage of her special attack stat. The correct play for Jinx is either to breed a Smoochum who does learn psychic moves, or spend way too long in the game corner to win Ice Beam, but I decided the rest of the team is strong enough that I'll try to make do with Hail and Blizzard. Even then, I give her my wide lens for the accuracy boost so that I can just shoot out hailless blizzards most of the time. Blackthorn City still has a trade that wants a female Dragonair. We could have technically gotten a Dratini by now with extensive Safari Zone development, but that requires leaving your game running for a long time, and then you'd still need a few levels of training to evolve it. We'll just wait until the post-game to directly catch a Dragonair. Mother had purchased a Choice Scarf with our savings by now, which is one of the better mom items. It's good for enabling a slower Pokemon to still sweep an opponent, as long as that Pokemon has an attack strong enough. Then, there's quite a party in the Move Deleter's house. It now also contains a Move Relearner for Heart Scales, a Grandma who will teach Draco Meteor just to the Dratini line or Kingdra, and a Grandpa who will teach the Elemental Hyper Beam style moves to your starter Pokemon. For now, I just used the Move Deleter to swap Cut and Strength between Sports and Using. Due to how I sequenced things, Using had ended up with Cut, but she would actually use Strength in combat once we swap who knows what. As a best practice before Clair, of course I beat up all the trainers down Route 45. HeartGold and SoulSilver did something unexpected with version-exclusive Pokemon here. Gligar and Teddiursa were version-exclusive Pokemon in Gold version, Silver had Fanpy and Skarmory. But in the remakes, HeartGold has Gligar and Fanpy both catchable here, while SoulSilver got Skarmory and Teddiursa. They swapped a single Pokemon from each version. The remakes were very careful to keep 90% of the exclusive list from the originals, this Route 45 swap being the one place they deviated. SoulSilver version is the one with Groudon, so maybe they were just moving the other ground types over to HeartGold, but that weak theory is my best. Let me know if you have another hypothesis. I stepped into Blackthorn Gym for the subordinate trainers next, and found it has a pretty fun puzzle in the remakes. Gone is the boulder pushing. This time we have a floating platform with obscure movement mechanics. I'm unironically into it. But my Dragon Killer Jinx is still pretty low level after clearing my way to Clair, so I did grind some levels in the Ice Cave until the team was level 37 before choosing to take on the Dragon-type gym leader, Clair. Level 37 being important because Using actually picks up Outrage, a very strong and fully accurate Dragon-type attack. Clair's Kingdra, weak only to Dragon moves, actually had no weakness in Generation 2 because there was no available, viable Dragon move on any Pokemon at this point in the game. HeartGold and SoulSilver rectified that with pretty much two options. You've got Dragon Claw for Alligator if you pull the TM on the right day in the Goldenrod department store, and the solution we're using here, Outrage Kangaskhan. I had Cigarette and Pasadena handle Clair's Gyarados and Dragonairs, then started Using again versus Kingdra. Fake Out plus one turn of Outrage wasn't quite lethal, but Clair was either out of heals by now or chose not to, and another turn of Outrage nicely handled Kingdra. You still gotta be quite intentional if you want to punish Clair, but having some options as opposed to literally none is a big difference, so HeartGold and SoulSilver definitely improved the experience here. Of course, we gotta visit the Dragon Den after to actually earn our badge because Clair is a grifter, and we still need to learn the Whirlpool HM for this one spot in the game. Yeah, was I mad about HMs yet this video? The burden of 8 actual HMs plus Flash, which might as well be one, continues to feel extreme and prevents the player from running cool strategies and utility moves on the team since you need your remaining slots just for type coverage. HMs are a defining feature of Pokemon series gameplay, but I still feel they could be kept around and made less punishing by either reducing the count to 5 or 6, that's 1 per party member, and diversifying which types the moves were in combat. Clair gives the Dragon Pulse TM once she acknowledges she lost, which if you didn't already have Dragon coverage for her, lets you turn Arcanine, Gyarados, or Feraligatr into Dragon Killers against Lance. Professor Elm gives us the Master Ball after winning our 8th badge as before, but new in HeartGold and SoulSilver, he points us back to Ecruteak City now for extra content in the dance theater. It's a strange and not very believable development, but apparently the Kimono Girls have been acting as fate. They architected our entire journey by giving the Togepi egg to Mr. Pokemon in the first place just to find a kind trainer who can bring back Ho-Oh with his kindness. All because they just wanted to see it, I guess? They're into birdwatching, and that gives them the right to puppeteer our destiny. My pathological demand avoidance could never. I would fully reject Ho-Oh and throw out the Rainbow Wing. Freaking Mass Effect Ghost Kid Kimono Girls. It's now that we finally have to fight all the evolutions one by one with no breaks to heal or swap who's in front. This gauntlet is one of the tougher fights in the game. It's a proper boss battle. Once we win, they give us the Clear Bell, which unlocks Ho-Oh up at the bell tower. Also, exactly now, Mom finally finished purchasing the Focus Sash, which is the final important one-off item that she can buy with our money, so it's okay to turn off Mom's savings after this. It does seem like she was pretty carefully calibrated to buy this just as we finish up with Johto. Good job to the developer who tuned it that way. So, let's hit that bell tower. We no longer need to fight a trio of sages for entry, but they're still hanging out to drop lore. There's a beautiful autumn path up to the tower, which I need to make this sentence longer just so we can enjoy it for longer. Then the dungeon itself is almost identical to before, with one-way jumps in the lower floors and a few teleporters near the top. Once at the top, the Kimono Girls perform a dance, the Clear Bell rings, and we get a neat low-poly cutscene of Ho-Oh coming in to land. The 3D cutscenes in the DS Pokemon games are really nice. Using them sparingly has kept them feeling special and important. I really like this. Once Ho-Oh lands, I initiate battle and throw the Master Ball to catch my final team member, Geralt. In the original games, Ho-Oh was a lot worse if you caught it at level 70 in Silver version because it didn't know Sacred Fire. They did fix that in the remakes, and now it'll know Sacred Fire in both encounters. For what it's worth, Lugia is better to catch early by playing SoulSilver version because only then does it come with extra sensory. Visit Elm once more afterward for some congratulatory words, and then he turns us toward Kanto now to challenge the Elite Four. Now, I always give my team a little report card on their performance as I head through Victory Road. This video has been much shallower on my team development as I go due to the huge amount of content in the game, with simultaneously the Pokemon themselves being old repeats. They just haven't been the focus. But I will still summarize everyone's performance throughout the run here and catch us up on how they've been doing before we go in to fight the Elite Four. Cigarette the Ampharos was great help for Falkner, then dropped off hard in the mid-game as Thundershock or Charge Beam did less and less damage. She never one-shot opponents, even ones weak to electric, until learning Discharge, evolving, and holding the choice specs, which came rather late. With significant investment, she's now doing fine, but that mid-game drag really drops her overall score, B-. Sports the Heracross is massively overpowered and might win the most improved since Generation 2 prize. Learning Brick Break naturally and early made him strong against a lot of the meta alone, and the Shadowclaw TM trivialized Morty. He was also strong for Jasmine and Pryce, and of course he swept Whitney alone. Sports even picked up Close Combat recently, which has little downside when you have so much attack and speed. Great stats, great moveset, and was easy to catch. A+. Report cards don't have S, you're thinking of tier lists. Wee the Azumarill has actually been excellent too. Body Slam let me use her in trainer fights way sooner than you'd think after hatching, and her bulk lets me switch her in to win most neutral matchups that I don't have a better plan for. As a water type, she's less interesting. There aren't a lot of water-weak opponents in the game, but now that she has same type Waterfall, she's often one-shotting foes who aren't even weak to water. Her only points off are because her coverage stinks, hurt by having to carry 3 HMs, A-. Using the Kangaskhan is solid. She's got great stats, and Fake Out plus an attack is enough to pseudo one-shot many opponents. Crunch adds some useful coverage, and Outrage was clutch against Clair. I'm keeping it in my pocket for Lance as well. But her coverages are more specific. Often she's just using Strength against neutral matchups and taking 2 attacks to win. Good in most situations, great in a couple, B+. In a shocking fall from grace, Pasadena the Jinx has been quite bad. I give her Shadow Ball, but that doesn't tend to one-shot foes that I want it to, and she's not very sturdy on the crackback. Relying on Blizzard for ice coverage sucks too. It was important during Clair, and it's going to be critical for beating Lance, but the low accuracy or the hail setup turn are real drawbacks, and lacking Psychic is a bummer for Bruno. She's narrow and unfortunately not even great at her one job, C. And Geralt the Ho-Oh just joined the party, so I'm slightly cheating and using my foreknowledge of how he ends up performing in order to score him now. Sacred Fire is an excellent move that basically begs you to PP max it, and then that's basically all I use him for. Flying and Fire share a lot of coverage, so I tend to favor the move that can cause a burn, but Fly does help against some fighting Pokemon who don't know Rock Slide. Great stats and okay coverage, but some common weaknesses, B+. I grinded the team just a few levels at the end of Victory Road to 41 before heading in to fight the Elite Four, which is remarkably similar to the original games. Will, Koga, Bruno, and Karen have not only the same exact Pokemon, but their levels are the same too. It's only movesets that have been modernized, and then the aces now hold a Citrus Berry. First one up is Will. His Zaytu me-firsted Cigarette's Discharge, paralyzing her, so he got to do it again before I landed one of my own to kill. His Jinx defeated Sports after Shadow Claw was barely non-lethal, so Pasadena cleaned up using Shadow Balls through a full restore. Paralyze ruined Sig for his second Zaytu, but using actually got there on a fake-out crunch. Then Executor died to Geralt Flies, chosen to waste more turns of the Reflect that he put up, before Pasadena Shadow Balled the final Slowbro, who did nothing but curse. Perhaps I should have led Geralt against Koga, cause the 2 turns that Sports needed for Aerial Ace against Ariados actually got him a solid hit and poisoned from a poison jab. Static from Cigarette paralyzed his Crobat, but that didn't matter when I one-shot on the counter. His Muck actually has a black sludge that a person could thief. It's leftovers, but only for poison types. After Discharge softened him up, Sports got him with Earthquake that I had picked up from a TM in Victory Road. Then Geralt burns through Venomoth and Forretress, Protect stealing my valuable Sacred Fire PP for the Koga win pretty easily. Bruno is the first Elite who actually posed a problem. Hitmontop does not have Detect this time, so I can actually use Fly to get him down. Onyx outsped Wee 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 and got in some damage before I could surf him. Hitmonchan kind of has coverage on everyone now with his elemental punches, newly non-awful in Gen 4, so I had using slug through with outrages and strength, taking remarkably little damage back. Hitmonlee confused Geralt with Swagger, but after one self-hit I snapped out and was able to fly down Hitmonlee. Then Machamp is a real problem. Rock Slide can hit airborne flyers, and he's got strong coverage besides. I had to have Cigarette get halfway, living a cross chop, then just sent out Sports for a neutral close combat to win. That situation where doing 50% damage was actually better than doing 70% so that the opponent does not feel the need to heal and lets you steal a victory from halfway. Karen got a fair bit more dangerous in the remake since a few of her Pokemon just didn't have real attacks in Gen 2. Umbreon is known as a mega tank, but Sports is enough of a cannon to still take the matchup in one non-critical close combat. Insane. Murkrow Discharge. Wee 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 didn't have many targets available overall in the league, but she's made for one-shotting a Houndoom who spent its turn setting up. Geralt would be good against Vileplume, but I've been using him a lot. The rest of the party wants XP too. So I risked a raw Blizzard with Pasadena and fortunately connected to one-shot. Then I'm up to Gengar without having given Karen any chances to heal. If I can avoid partially damaging Gengar, we'll have scored free value dodging every full restore opportunity. To that end, I go with Fake Tears from Pasadena, which gets spited, oh nar, for a single Shadow Ball to then bust through Gengar's lowered special defense. That's Karen done as a series of one-shots and no healing from her. Then I'm on to fight Flying-type Champion Lance with most of the team still at level 41 against him at 44 to 50. HeartGold did increase Lance's levels by a few, which I don't like. I'd rather the whole league be raised if they're going to raise Lance's so that you realize earlier and don't get stuck out of your depth for the champion. I was quite underleveled for this fight, so it did take me a few tries. Cigarette took out Gyarados to level up and learn Signal Beam. That's actually pretty cool coverage for an electric type, and I wish I had that for Will. Then the game said he's sending out a Dragonite, so I put in Pasadena. Turns out he reached right for his ace level 50 Dragonite, so I went for a Blizzard and fortunately connected for the kill. Aerodactyl next has coverage on my entire team though, and the speed to cause issues. Thunderfang took Wee 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 low and even paralyzed, but thankfully one waterfall was enough that I don't need a turn 2. Another Dragonite came next, so I gave using a chance to showcase Outrage again. That did work, but I won't be able to repeat it. Thunderwave into Dragon Rush left using pretty beat up. His third Dragonite unfortunately seemed to have really high speed. This thing killed Pasadena before she could go. My only out was to dip into my item bag, so I sacrificed Cigarette for a turn spent full restoring using, who was then able to outrage down Dragonite 3. All he's got left is Charizard, and all I have left pretty much is Geralt, who resists his scariest moves and puts him on Dragon Claws, which, as off-type moves, don't hurt me too bad. So, we're trading blows, me using Fly, which tends to do just under half damage to him. Sadly, that means we leave him with a sliver of health to full restore, and I'm worried I'll need another of my own until that turn's Fly gets a particularly high damage roll for a good amount over halfway. That encourages me to play with the margins. I lock in another Fly, living his Shadow Claw at 2 hit points, and the final Fly does take me home. I don't personally think Lance needed the level buff that he alone got. That was one bad choice from the HeartGold development team. His high-level team did force the use of in-battle restorative items for me, but to play the Elite Four at a level where I didn't need that would have made the rest of the Elites much too easy. Keep the Hall of Fame and the credits. Let's you and I have a chat. Pokémon HeartGold and SoulSilver are very strong remakes. In fact, they may be the best remake of any game that I have ever played. Because a lot of video game remakes are just reskins and fidelity updates. Dead Space, Demon's Souls, and I'd even argue Pokémon FireRed and LeafGreen to some extent. To their detriment, development teams will insist on a careful adherence to the original game, which makes them bluntly less fun to replay. This style of remake is good for people who never played the original or don't have access to it due to hardware evolutions, but without taking any creative risks, they can also feel corporate and cash grabby. Other remakes do too much, mostly looking at Final Fantasy VII here. That remake is not what I wanted. Changing the core gameplay shouldn't bear the same title. HeartGold and SoulSilver hit a middle ground of keeping the same core gameplay, but updating the mechanics and also adding lots of new content throughout the game, not just shamefully packed in a DLC island. Gyms are redone, new Pokemon are available earlier, the Kimono Girls have a new plot, there's a new Safari Zone which is fun to use and comes with the new Routes 47 and 48 and a handful of new trainer battles. Plus, spoiler for next video, Kanto got very filled out with new content where the game needed it most. The changed content is integrated with the game world, not layered on top of it, which is the gross feeling that I called out in previous videos that I got from the Battle Frontier in Emerald or the Sevi Islands in FireRed and LeafGreen. Let's get specific about the good changes though, instead of just glazing the game. Pokeathlon. It's more interactive than previous contest systems, and some of the minigames are actually intrinsically fun. Plus, it gave more uses for the overworld sprites that they drew for every species for the Pokemon Walking With You mechanic. It's good for many hours of gameplay if you want to set all the records, so the games might get old once they reach grinding status, but still, love it. The Pokemon Walking With You mechanic is adorable, non-intrusive, and actually a small usability win because you can now know who's going to be sent out in battle first without checking the menus. Adding more mystique and plot around the legendary birds is nice. They are supposed to be a big deal. The original games just let you walk in and capture the thing and nobody in the world reacted to it. I personally didn't love the awkward Kimono Girl cutscenes throughout the world, but they were improvement on nothing, I suppose. Combat balance is better, but aside from the Pokemon themselves, more care was taken with the TM placements. It's no longer a gigantic power spike to reach Goldenrod and grab Elemental Punch TMs from the department store, and Surf does not revolutionize your team as soon as you reach Ekrutik. Mom saving money became more impactful, berries stopped being shoved down our throats, natures are now explained in the UI, so many small systems are just better. The game is not perfect though. I actually don't want to spend too much time being a poopy pants, but holy heck, the UI is bad in HeartGold. 6 items a page, items needed to be in a long list, especially TMs. Navigating your inventory is a nightmare. The worst part of it is how button presses are inconsistent. The weird button arrangements make it so that pressing up, then down, leaves you on a different place than where you started. But like magnify this times 100, it's legitimately hard to guess where pressing a directional button will put your cursor next. Why does pressing up from the bottom of your roster page put you on the 5th Pokemon instead of your 6th one? Why don't the shoulder buttons change pages? Why do I have to mouse over to a side menu randomly in blue font when I want to select an HM? Combined with the randomly selected colors for everything and the lack of contrast visually, HeartGold and SoulSilver have one of the most frustrating UIs of any game ever, and Nintendo should really be better about this in the year 2010. Touch an iPhone, geez. And the egg move thing. It was meant to be tongue-in-cheek how far I had to bend backwards just to make one of them kind of work. I'm not sure that came across. They're not a bad change, but just slightly confusing that they may as well have not bothered adding to the game. On that note, we can begin our sign-off. I'm sorry I couldn't fit the post-game into this video, but this is actually the same way that I originally had to break up my gold and silver videos, so expect a parallel HeartGold post-game video soon. Game just has too much going on. Thank you for watching to the end, and if you had a good time, a comment or a like would help me a great deal getting my work in front of more eyeballs. Also, thanks very much to my patrons who help keep this channel afloat without taking questionable sponsorships. Y'all are the best. The community has a friendly Discord if you want to hang out with some kind people between uploads, and I'm also live on Twitch Sunday evenings if you want to see me get salty at bargain indie titles. That's all for now. Peace out, Girl Scout.